Elijah thought that after he won such a spectacular showdown on Mount Carmel, Jezebel would concede that Jehovah was indeed the one true God. For the rain had finally returned after a long 3.5-year drought. Elijah had already swayed hubby King Ahab to his side and even delivered him home safely via a miraculous run to the palace in Jezreel, where Jezebel was waiting. It was expected that Ahab would talk some sense into Jezebel, and she would then accept defeat. That did not happen. Ahab only enraged her more when he told her what went down on Mount Carmel. She probably exploded when Ahab told her that Elijah had killed all 450 of her prophets. Without even waiting till morning, she dispatched a messenger to awaken Elijah. He was asleep on the ground outside the palace from exhaustion. It was the middle of the night, but the look on the messenger's face said it all. Let's read it from 1 Kings 19, verse 2. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah. She said, "May the God strike me dead if this time tomorrow I don't take your life the way you took the lives of Baal's prophets." Now Elijah was wide awake, and he knew there'd be no pancake breakfast with Ahab. No, it was time to run. The great prophet succumbed to fear and doubt. Panic overtook him. His extraordinary courage was gone. He suddenly forgot about God's complete protection over him during the last 3.5 years. Perhaps he was overwhelmed by guilt, leading to sudden PTS from commanding the people to seize the prophets of Baal and to not let anyone get away. That's 1 Kings 18, verse 40. That they did. Again, all 450 of Jezebel's hand-picked servants were killed by the brook of Kishon. Hopelessness, despair, and gloom fueled Elijah as he fled for his life. The immediate goal was to make it to Beersheba. That southern city was about 185 kilometers away. Some say he went via the Jordan Valley, some say through Samaria. No, I believe his best bet was to leave the Jezreel Valley via Megiddo Pass. That route would have made him pass by the famous nearby town that some believe is referenced in Revelation 16:16. That word Armageddon is most likely a word that is symbolic for a battle for our minds between good and evil, a battle between deciding what is true and that which is false. Elijah's mind could only think about getting away from Jezebel. He was determined to seek safety at the mountain of God, sometimes called Horeb, in the northwest corner of the vast Arabian Peninsula. The first few perilous days, he probably traveled by night along the coast. There he could choose various roads that skirt along the sea, and they would have given him a much better chance of remaining concealed. Elijah would have tried to blend in with the coastal travelers coming and going from Joppa. He was following a path similar to Jonah's escape about 100 years earlier. Soon he made it to Beersheba and probably filled his water skin at Abraham's well. You can still see that deep well today. From there, he went on alone, another day's journey into the brutal Negev desert. Here's a video excerpt from my drive south of Beersheba a couple years ago. Yeah, deep into the Negev. Abraham's well's about 30 clicks behind me. Getting kind of thirsty. All I found is the Lord of the Rings eye so far. Heading down to Sinai. Initially, you pass a huge tower that channels solar radiation. It is reminiscent of the Eye of Sauron. Geographically, this indeed is Middle Earth. It's a border separating the biblical kings of the north and south, as outlined by Daniel 11. I'm surprised Elijah was able to find a broom tree to sleep under, because Middle Earth is barren. Yeah, I'm in the wilderness of Zin. Sin, one of 3 of them. But, yeah, you don't want to be stuck in this wilderness. It's in the Negev. Scripture tells us an angel was sent to revive him with water and a bread cake. A very potent ingredient must have been in this heavenly food, because it gave him all his strength back, plus more, to complete 40 days of travel without eating. He needed it, for this long, arduous route passes through Mitzpe Ramon, a stunning meteor crater that is one of the largest in the world. Interestingly, when you calculate the combined average miles per day from Jezreel to Mount Horeb, with the 11-day journey to Horeb spoken of in Deuteronomy 1, verse 2, you come up with about 11 to 12 miles per day. The calculations give you a low of 9 miles up to a high of 15 miles a day. But after fudging in terrain, rest days, and type of traveler, the mean's around 12 miles per day. Thus, when Elijah reached the junction west of Kadesh Barnea, he only had 11 days to go. Not far down the road from this Kadesh Barnea marker, he would have passed a turn on the right that leads to Solomon's copper mines, which are in Timna National Park. Next, a view of the beautiful Red Sea came into view. Saudi Arabia about 20 clicks that way. Red Sea. Nuiba Beach about 30 clicks in Egypt. And then of course Eilat, Port of Solomon.
Eilat.
Which is current day Eilat Aqaba.
Eilat.
There he would turn left to the real Mount Sinai. Not right, for the fake one that many visit today, even though that's 20 miles shorter than the real one. Maybe he could have still seen some evidence of where Solomon used to build his navy. In 1 Kings 9, verse 26. It says, King Solomon also built a fleet of ships at Ezion-Geber, a port near Elath in the land of Edom, along the shore of the Red Sea. I suspect that Elijah, as a prophet, was privy to detailed inside information on how best to get to Mount Sinai from this point. First, he would proceed along the coast to Hakel. Then, he would advance inland following the trading road that leads to current-day El Sharaf. El Sharaf is a very important oasis, both today and back then. It is my expert opinion that this junction of wadis was named Mara by Moses. Here, he would make a large left turn to follow the Great Wadi all the way up to Mount Sinai. This wadi is like a wide highway engineered for a gentle 2,500-foot elevation gain over 44 miles. If he didn't turn left but continued on to the right, downstream he'd find Rephidim, Alush, and Elam. Then he would have to climb the steep 4,000-foot ridge that runs north to south between Horeb and Sinai. That ridge is only about 20 miles east of where Jethro lived in Midian. Elijah could have climbed this high wall, but it is not something a shepherd would attempt with sheep. That is why Exodus 3 verse 1 says, Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There are many correct translations of this verse, and they have this particular wilderness stated to be on the far side, or the back side, behind, or furthest away from Midian. As you can clearly see, the wilderness of Sinai is not west of Midian, but east. Don't be fooled by the dishonest theologians and archaeologists out there that twist this verse. After 37 miles, Elijah passed through the gates of Sinai. These gates are beside the likely gravesite of the rebellious 3,000 golden calf worshippers that did not repent. Then, a few more miles down the path, he would have made a key right turn to get into the valley between Horeb and Sinai. Some call this the North Valley. I definitely believe that Moses grazed his sheep on the slopes of this large valley. It is nestled between the peaks of current-day Jebel Laz and Jebel Makla, that is, these two ancient Bible peaks which envelop the North Valley of Mount Sinai. The crucial features found here is why Elijah would choose to find a cave and bed down. This valley lured Moses to graze his sheep because of having such quality spring grass and lots of water. It is notable that after encountering a burning bush at this specific place, Moses found himself back here, the mountain of God, a year or so later to get the 10 Commandments with Joshua. Again, there are many caves. There is year-round flowing water, and this valley has great views of both Mount Sinai and Horeb. Yeah, Moses getting the sheep over all these crags and canyons. He must have been a very patient man. He knew exactly where to go, and yeah, he certainly wouldn't cross them down there, but probably gently brought them up to the riverbed. Amazing. During my first visit here,
this four-wheeling man, Andrew's he's doing it.
I walked a short distance in and found a small cave. My second visit, we could only look at it because it was almost dark.
Mount Sinai over there and Horeb over there. Perfect. You can just kind of, you can lay down in here.
During my third visit, I had to lay down in it again to contemplate the profound history of this location.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Nice and flat in here. So, you know, you can just spread right out and relax.
Elijah and Paul, they needed to rest. After 40 days of running, yeah, he needed to rest. So yeah, this is nice. This is really nice. Later, I checked out another rock cave, just a short climb to the left. If Elijah didn't like that cave a little further down and he was trying to make his way up to the top, yeah, you could crawl in here for the night. Man, this is like first class. First class. Lots of room. Then walking further over this prominent divide and crest, I ran into a shepherd grazing many sheep. If you can graze sheep today with all the negative climate change, then it follows that the slopes of Mount Sinai was a grassy paradise 3,500 years ago. Past this grazing area is a third cave. It is found in a walled area between two lava flows. This is another interesting little cave that you could imagine both Elijah or Joshua sleeping in, two men whose bread and water was sure. Next, about 600 yards away, you finally come to a narrow, well-defined wadi with flowing water. It is this particular spot that would satisfy the most fussy traveler looking for a place to spend the night. There are several caves found along the west side of this sandstone channel. I have not yet checked out the ones higher upstream, like this big cave here, but they are seen on this drone flight. That is certainly something that I'll have to do next visit. I believe it was here that Elijah began to determine God's plan for him and understand further how he interacts with us. Elijah was having a crisis over perceived failure and a needed serious reassurance. Just as Moses, under heavy responsibility, who asked to see God's glory, it was now Elijah's turn to commune with God and have his human frailty strengthened. Was Jehovah in the fire that came down after his prayer in 1 Kings 18:36? Did Yahweh personally consume the sacrifice and lick up all the water? He pondered whether Yahweh could possibly be the chief god in the Canaanite pantheon called El. After all, the false prophets of the day referred to El as a father and creator God. It was assumed that the El or El in the fake triad came from the Hebrew word Elohim. Elijah resisted such thoughts and reminded himself that this false theology was passed down from pagan myths about Nimrod and Semiramis and Tammuz. Idolatrous Egypt bought into this pattern and named their gods Osiris, Isis, and Horus. What did trouble Elijah's mind was how Jehovah was blamed for bad weather, instead of blaming Baal worship. The damaging weather events of the day, such as the 3.5-year drought, troubled his spirit. Everyone seemed to have suffered in Samaria, so Elijah assumed that he was the only believer that lived there. If Baal truly was a fake god of wood and stone, then it had to be either Jehovah or Satan behind other damaging events of fire, earthquakes, and severe storms affecting land and sea. The book of Job gives us some insight into what Satan can do if given a chance. Just an angel landing can cause an earthquake. The swirling lies of the day briefly held Elijah's mind in doubt and fear, but he rose above it by sheer trust in God. His faithful prayer was heard by God while he hid in a cave on the slopes of Mount Sinai. We thus come to 1 Kings 19, verse 9. There Elijah entered a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah then poured out his heart to God, telling Yahweh how he did everything asked of him, but it was all in vain, because now he was the only believer left, and both corrupt Israel and Queen Jezebel were trying to kill him. God then gave a very interesting reply, reading now 1 Kings 19, verse 11. "Go out and stand on the mountain," the Lord replied. "I want you to be there when I pass by." That's the contemporary English version. Now God just spoke to him in a still, small voice, but was about to make an interesting point that would cure Elijah's despair. I believe it has to do with God's best method in communicating with us that will lead us towards His will. We are much more likely to change our ways and do what He says after hearing a soft voice than feasting our eyes on an impressive manifestation of power. Moses requested to see God at Mount Sinai centuries earlier, and God answered his request by revealing His character. Elijah's need from God was reassurance of His deliverance from Israel and from evil. He did not get any consolation from the wind, the earthquake, or the fire that passed before the cave. God pressed on to deliver the answer. So he started again in a gentle whisper, a small voice, a gentle breeze, which brought Elijah outside of the cave. Reading now verse 9. The voice said the exact same thing prior to the wind, earthquake, and fire. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah gave the same answer, but this time God told him what to do, where to go, and who to anoint, ending with, "By the way, I have 7,000 men who do not bend the knee to Baal." Elijah then knew he was not alone, and God had a plan. If Elijah had stood his ground 40 days earlier, then God would have had a solution to restrain or kill Jezebel. The result would have been undoubtedly great reform in Israel, a solution that would have happened in days after Mount Carmel. But now, because he ran from Jezebel, we find from reading on in Scripture that it would take another long 18 years for Jezebel to die. So there at the foot of Mount Sinai, Elijah began Plan B with instructions to anoint both Jehu and Elisha on his way back to Samaria. These two men would suffer great responsibility in taking down perhaps the most wicked woman in history.
I can tell we need to talk about things, so I'll let you start. Yes, I'm listening. Oh, I understand that. You need help with what you say? Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy, because the last time that we talked about this, I felt like I was really clear. I gave you everything that you needed to hear, but you're still asking me for more. No, I'm just trying to understand what you're asking.
They would be the instrument of judgment unleashed to not only kill Jezebel and Ahab, but their entire bloodline. So important was the role of Jehu that he was anointed twice, like Solomon. David was actually anointed 3 times. So first, Jehu was anointed by Elijah, and then 18 years later, again by a student of the prophet Elisha. Let's read it. It's in 2 Kings chapter 9, verses 5 to 7. And when he arrived, the army commanders were sitting there. I have a message for you, commander, he said. For which of us? Asked Jehu. For your commander, he replied. So Jehu got up and went into the house where the young prophet poured the oil on his head and declared, This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anoint you king over the Lord's people, Israel. And you are to strike down the house of your master Ahab, so that I may avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord shed by the hand of Jezebel. He was like Orlando Bloom in Lord of the Rings, Legolas, a master of the bow. Jehu took his bow, pulled it all the way back, and shot Jehoram completely through. He fell and died. His body was then disposed of in the very vineyard of Naboth, an innocent man that Jezebel ruthlessly killed in order to steal his property. Let's read it. But Jehu drew his bow with his full strength and shot Joram between his shoulders, and the arrow went through his heart, and he sank down in his chariot. And Jehu said to Bidkar, his officer, Pick him up and throw him on the property of the field of Naboth, the Jezreelite. For remember, when you and I were riding together after his father Ahab, that the Lord brought this pronouncement against him. He quickly pursued Jezebel's grandson, Ahaziah, king of Judah, shooting him with another arrow. We are told this grandson, Ahaziah, died at Megiddo, and his body was then taken to Jerusalem. This undoubtedly enraged Athaliah, his mother, daughter of Jezebel, but that's another great story of revenge I'll leave for now. At this point, Jehu could confidently ride back to Jezreel and finish the job. With sheer delight of being on a mission from God, he parked his chariot under the palace window of Jezebel. She was waiting for him with full painted makeup, jewelry, and an elegant gown. I suspect appearing exactly as Peter and Timothy warned us not to dress like in 1 Peter 3:3 and 1 Timothy 2, verses 9 to 10. So Jezebel called out mocking him by calling him Zimri, a previous king that lasted only 7 days. It was then that 2 or 3 eunuchs stood beside her, so Jehu instinctively asked if they were with him or with her. They made their choice quickly, and at Jehu's request, threw her out the window. They did it without hesitation. It was an epic defenestration that has echoed down the ages. Her screams were silenced as her blood was splattered on the wall and the horses below. She was then trampled by the horses. It was now time to celebrate, so Jehu went into the palace for a feast. When he came out, all that was left of her was a skull, feet, and hands. Wild, hungry dogs had eaten her quickly, and only later to spread undigested pieces everywhere. This, of course, was a horrible disgrace in those days, but was prophesied by Elijah the Tishbite years before, after leaving Mount Sinai. So now you know the rest of the story of what happened after Elijah's visit to a cave on Mount Sinai. I would like to end with a special organ piece written by Max Reger. It is his most famous, entitled Benedictus. This word means invocation, after verses in the Bible that proclaim, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Elijah came to Sinai in the name of Jehovah. What makes this organ piece special is it begins and ends with the softest registration possible on a pipe organ. But in the middle of the piece, there is a rising tumult that progresses to the loudest possible registration, that is full organ, tutti. Thus this piece perfectly fits the Elijah experience at Mount Sinai. Where words fail, music takes over.